Thank you, Carmen. Welcome everyone to the webinar, Hydrogen Water Dosing Study for ME/CFS, a new clinical trial. So my name is Tim Xiao, the Chief Scientific Officer for SOLVE. Today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Friedberg, Research Professor at Stony Brook University School of Medicine. Dr. Friedberg is a founder and editor of the peer-reviewed journal Fatigue, Biomedicine, Health, and Behavior, the quarterly journal of the professional organization International Association for Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, Myalgic Encephalitis. He serves as the current president of the CFS ME. His research focuses on identifying biomarkers in ME/CFS and developing new treatments for the illness. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Friedberg. Please tell us more about your current clinical trial and explain to our audience how they can get involved.
Well, thank you, Tim, very much. Welcome, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And I'm just going to load up my slides here. And my presenter view. Okay. All right. So I have a particular interest in hydrogen water as a treatment for ME/CFS, and I'm now on my third pilot study to determine if it has the ability to help people with symptoms and with functioning, in this illness that really has no established illness. And I appreciate Tim, Carmen, everybody for this kind invitation to talk about the work I've been doing. So these hydrogen water trials are all funded by Natural Wellness Now Health Products. And yes, restorative treatments for ME/CFS, that's the hope. That's the goal of many people who are using either interventional approaches or studying or identifying pathophysiology and trying to target treatments to the pathologies that are identified through the research. Here, I'm focused on persistent factors, things that have been linked to the illness, and more generally to chronic disease, and perhaps they play a role in perpetuating ME/CFS, and if we can ameliorate the influence of these factors, people can feel and function better. So oxidative stress and systemic inflammation, these are the two processes that I'm going to focus on that can be modified, it appears, with hydrogen water. So with oxidative stress, just to simplify, you have your normal cell in the body, and there are processes and substances in the body called free radicals. These are compounds that lack an electron. They have a freestanding electron, and they can do damage to cells. So oxidative stress is more of a system-wide problem. It affects the brain. It affects all systems of the body. So oxidative stress, having the ability to do damage to tissues and cell structures, is a destructive process that can be reversed, at least in principle. Although studies of antioxidants that reduce oxidative stress with like vitamin E or vitamin C, just in general for chronic illness like cardiovascular disease, have really not been all that successful. In fact, too high doses, antioxidants can cause problems. So that's why hydrogen water seems to have some unique aspects to it and might make it particularly helpful in ME/CFS. So the other, the other process, I'm sorry, I got way ahead of myself, is systemic inflammation. Again, this is a characteristic of most chronic disease. And certainly when you compare people with ME/CFS to healthy controls, inflammatory markers are elevated in ME/CFS. Same goes with oxidative stress when you compare patients to healthy controls. The other thing is oxidative stress, depending on how you measure it, it is correlated with symptoms in ME/CFS, which, that's a pretty important link. Now, does that mean the oxidative stress is actually producing the symptoms? Probably, it would be nice if it was that simple. It probably is not. So hydrogen gas, which has been a known quantity in the medical field for probably 100 years now, but it hasn't been recognized until more recently as a potential medical agent. And it's simply the hydrogen molecule, two hydrogen atoms bonded together. So it can be prepared in a number of different ways. You can shoot electricity through water. You can dissolve a particular type of magnesium pill in water, and it'll generate hydrogen gas bubbles. But that hydrogen gas could be a type of therapy, that's only recently been recognized, like in about the past 15 years. The hydrogen water as a potential therapy, or hydrogen gas more specifically, because it really is the gas that's the therapeutic agent, has been extensively studied in animal populations, and just recently, the last few years, in human trials. And it's been found, again and again, replication, which is so important in science. Molecular hydrogen gas reduces oxidative stress and inflammation in animal studies. It also stimulates energy metabolism, which has to do with well-functioning mitochondria. You may have heard mitochondria appears to be, at least impaired mitochondria, appears to be relevant to ME/CFS. So if we now consider hydrogen water as a treatment for humans, we're hoping this oxidative stress that is linked to this illness can be reduced with hydrogen water. Hydrogen water produces antioxidant processes in the body. This reduces the oxidative stress, or another way of saying it is free radicals that damage healthy cells. Now, our first study, which was done a couple of years ago, was a 4-week trial using an over-the-counter supplement, a magnesium supplement, to produce hydrogen gas. Unfortunately, we didn't find any symptomatic improvement or biological improvement. We did measure salivary markers and also heart rate variability. Again, no change. And we think it's because we used a relatively high dose of the hydrogen water. It did produce significant side effects, and no one wants that if they can avoid it. So we did a second trial. This was expanded from 4 to 8 weeks, and we reduced the dosage in half. This is more in line with what you see in other studies. 2 or 3 glasses of hydrogen water consumed every day by people in the study. And this is an example of one of our bottles of magnesium tablets that produce the hydrogen water. So anyway, these are things that probably you're not all that interested in, but we enrolled 12 participants out of about 19 screened. Everyone met Fukuda criteria. Notably, great majorities had impaired memory or concentration, post-exertional malaise, and unrefreshing sleep. These are 3 of the 4 symptom criteria in the Institute of Medicine definition. So I think our use of Fukuda's, it's still mapped onto the IOM criteria, and I know that is important, as were our case definitions are evolving to be really better focused on doing proper diagnoses. So our compliance was high. We had better than 90% compliance with consumption of daily hydrogen water. We had patients fill out their paper tracker cards at home. The dropout was low, below 20%. That's pretty good. Adverse effects, about 1 in 2 reported adverse effects, largely mild. Gastric symptoms and headache were the most commonly reported. So we did find a significant reduction in fatigue severity on the fatigue severity scale and a significant improvement in physical function on the short form 36. Now, these are self-report scales. These are not performance measures where people do a 6-minute walk test or something like that. And again, these are pilot trials. We want to see what works. And then when we find something that seems to work, we enlarge the trial with more measures. So yes, potential signals of improvement in the second trial, improvements in physical function and fatigue. And our next trial, which is ongoing, we're hoping will show stronger effects if we extend the duration of the trial even more from 8 weeks to what we're doing now, which is 16 weeks. So this is the ongoing trial where we're looking for volunteers. And again, it's hydrogen water, and we're comparing different dosages of the hydrogen water. We're measuring oxidative stress because that seems to be a key measure of the effects of hydrogen water in ME/CFS. These are home-based studies. There's no travel, no cost, ages 18 to 65. We compensate people who complete the trial up to $80, and that is in the form of a gift card. We recruit with US only. We've even recruiting in Canada, as much as we'd like to recruit outside the US, there are just too many impractical elements of doing that with the mailing and all kinds of other issues. If you're interested, want further information, drop me an email. You may call me at this number. And these are the acknowledgements of who have been helping me into our third trial that we're now doing. And just to acknowledge Christina Guffrey, Maria Malazzo, Pam Ginix, Dennis Choi, Zhao Zhang, and Zhai Yang. I think I pronounced that correctly. So that is my presentation, and I welcome questions, comments, whatever input you'd like to offer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Friedberg. This is a great presentation. And I want to remind the participant that you can all join Dr. Friedberg's study via Solve Together. And Solve Together team will provide a list to Dr. Friedberg so that his team can conduct a pre-screening afterwards. So what's presented on the screen is a QR code where you can scan and join on your phone even. So I just want to let you know about the option here. And we also want to move on to our Q&A. We have lots of questions. So just to use our time well, as my colleague is presenting the Solve Together related slide on the screen, I will move on to some of the questions that really stood out to us. So Dr. Friedberg, I see at least 3 major type of questions. So the first type of question is really about the hydrogen water. So I think to kick it off, I wonder, could you comment on whether there's any associated or known risk or adverse events in addition to what you have presented associated with hydrogen water intake?
Yeah, I mean, that's an important question. In the human trials, there have been very mild side effects like heartburn, loose bowels, headache, kind of like I presented. And almost never are they more than mild. But I will tell you, in the ME/CFS population, people are sensitive. I mean, it's well known that people react, kind of unexpectedly to various standard medications. So appears no exception with hydrogen water. We actually found a higher level of side effects with hydrogen water than the literature led us to believe. So that's why we reduced the dose in half after the first trial. Second trial, 80% of the side effects, as I mentioned, were in the mild category. Just about all the rest were in the moderate, and one or two were in the severe category. That means that if you had loose stool, it might last for a few days. So anyway, if you have GI sensitivity, I could understand that you might want to think twice before entering a trial like this. And I've had people tell me that, they want to enter it, but they're concerned about GI type side effects, which is mostly what we see. So yeah, I think those are important caveats for anyone with ME/CFS who's considering something like this.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful. An associated question is, how does hydrogen water compare to inhaled hydrogen?
Inhaled hydrogen, it's first of all, you need fairly expensive apparatus to generate the hydrogen and inhale it. It's less easy to control, and at least from what I've read, inhaled hydrogen seems to be better for more acute traumatic conditions and diseases. The hydrogen water is just much more portable, much more convenient, easy to use. So I would say the inhaled hydrogen, certainly you're getting the direct inhalation of the hydrogen gas. Maybe it's more efficient in some ways than drinking the water. But hydrogen water generates hydrogen gas bubbles. And when you drink it, the hydrogen gas is absorbed in a somewhat different way than the inhaled version of it. So frankly, I don't know that much about inhaled hydrogen because the vast majority of the studies are with hydrogen water.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And also about hydrogen water, because our audience, not all of them were trained in science and medicine. So the question is that whether hydrogen water is hydrogen peroxide. Can this lighten your hair when you ingest it?
Well, that's a good question. No, this is the hydrogen peroxide is actually is a result of oxidative stress. It is not a good thing. Yeah, and hydrogen peroxide is used, for minor skin irritation. It has a completely different, what it has, a kind of a therapeutic use. It's more for surface skin issues. Hydrogen peroxide and hydrogen water are completely different. And so don't get the idea that I recommended that you get hydrogen peroxide. In fact, it's something you want to avoid in any kind of therapy because it really is a type of oxidative stress that results from it.
Yeah, this is a very important point for us to make it clear. So these are different things. So please don't try hydrogen peroxide at home. So an associate question is more about the association with the microbiome. Might hydrogen-enriched water help with gut microbiomes?
Well, maybe it will. I know there's been some speculation about the gut microbiome, which generates a lot of healthy processes throughout the body, and including hydrogen gas. Now, the question is, if hydrogen gas is generated in the gut microbiome, uh, is there a link to the mitochondria where hydrogen gas as an antioxidant and a booster of energy metabolism, which is related to mitochondria, might the gut hydrogen gas somehow be transferred, in other words, through a normal biological process, strengthen the mitochondria? I don't know the answer to that. And we don't know the actual physiological pathways whereby hydrogen gas helps people to feel better. So it's all kind of a matter, it's the mechanism of why hydrogen water works. We really don't know. It seems that it's more than just inhaling the hydrogen gas or drinking the hydrogen water, because if you look at the pharmacokinetics of hydrogen gas, it's out of your system within 20 minutes. So something more is going on. There might be some kind of genetic signaling in the body that gives it its more enduring effects over time. So that's a long-winded answer to a good question that I guess we really don't have a good answer to, but just the kind of issues that come up when you're trying to answer that question.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Friedberg. So I'm going to combine two questions. A question came up from the audience, which is, can we make hydrogen water at home? And another question put in more specific context. I inherited my father's Kengen water machine. Can I use the machine to make my own hydrogen water at home to participate in this clinical trial?
Yeah, I have. I'm not sure that you can. At least from what I know about it, I'm not sure that produces hydrogen gas. So I can't vouch for using it. So it's I mean that's been around for a while, hasn't it? That device, that machine, Tim? Yeah,
I think so. It's
yeah. I don't know if it actually produces hydrogen gas or not. I mean, again, the history of producing hydrogen gas by these, electrolyzing, there are machines that actually put, you could turn on your faucet, it goes into a machine, and it decomposes H2O and generates hydrogen gas under very high pressure, and then you can drink it as hydrogen water. Now, the thing is, no one knew until the last 15 years that the hydrogen water actually is a therapy. They did it for other reasons, so that it actually produces, people were getting therapeutic effects. They had no idea that it was hydrogen is inert. H2 is inert. So why would it be a therapy? But it turns out it is.
Yeah, thank you. And also some combined questions. Typically, how long does it take for us to be able to see the effect of hydrogen water? And what is the duration of the trial for your follow-up and observation?
Yeah, it's a 16-week trial. And actually, that's the question. I have seen 24-week trials in type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome with using hydrogen water, same formulation that we use. And they've had very significant results, but that's 6-month trial. That's a long time. Now, my trial is 16 weeks, not quite as long, because I don't want to go 24 weeks unless I feel I have to. It does seem, 8 weeks, we found significant result, but I can't say those signals bowled me over and say, whoa, we have a new therapy here. It's just, it shows promise that perhaps a longer trial will work better. And having talked to a number of patients, they say very often in this illness, in order for therapies to work, medical type therapies, you need a longer trial than, let's say, a doctor or a health provider would expect. So, when I ran this 30-day trial, people told me it's too short. We don't care what it is. You need, and you know what? I think they're right. We need a longer duration trial. So I don't know the answer. I'm hoping 16 weeks is going to produce a bigger bang for the buck than the 8-week trial.
Yeah, thank you. And then how did you decide on the initial dosage and the formulation in terms of how you deliver the hydrogen water? So just to clarify, whether a patient is going to receive a liquid form or some pill to be dissolved. I think you mentioned that, but I think it came out of the question. Is you want to be clear for our audience.
Yeah, I'm totally not surprised if with all the information I just gave that people are a little confused. Yeah, it is what we're using is a pill that you drop into a glass of water and you wait 90 seconds. And at that point, you get maximum bubbling, maximum hydrogen gas bubbling. And then the study volunteer drinks it all at once. And we're hoping that leads to the maximum amount of hydrogen gas to be absorbed in the body.
Thank you very much. And I think many actually expressed the interest in joining. So you clarified that you only take US participants.
Yeah.
And aside from the age and geographical location, do you have any other inclusion or exclusion criteria?
We do have, although for just contacting us, the very basics, you need to be between 18 and 65 and live in the US. Usually for this group, I don't have to say you need 6 months of fatigue. Oh, really? Well, we don't have. I know I'm talking to people who are totally familiar with what's involved in terms of how long you have to be fatigued. So yes, just for purposes of contacting us, you need to be in the age range and in the US.
Yeah, and that's why I just want to add on to what Dr. Friedberg mentioned. So once you submit your info and your interest to solve together, and then Dr. Friedberg's team will still conduct a pre-screening. I think then and you will be considered to the next round of selection processes.
Yeah, there's a Zoom screen that we do for everybody. Can take up to about 45 minutes. And then it's a back and forth. You get full information about what you'll be doing in the study, and then you decide if you want to do it. So it's, again, it's fully IRB approved. There's a formal consent. So everything that you need to do for a formal study, in science is involved in getting screened into this study.
Thank you very much, Dr. Friedberg. So we have this upvoting system. Just want to remind the audience, and I see that there are some interesting some question of common interest. Let me start with this. I think Dr. Friedberg answered part of it. So the question is that whether this hydrogen water pill, after dissolving the cup of water, does this release in stomach or intestine? And what's the hydrogen's half-life? Is it in gut versus in blood versus other cells?
Yeah, so when you drink the hydrogen water with all the bubbles, part of it is absorbed into the oral cavity in the mouth. Part of it is absorbed in the gut. So in the breath, you can still detect hydrogen in people's breath up to about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then it seems to be fully absorbed by then. A little more in the gut. In terms of the circulation, it's in the circulation, the hydrogen gas, for about 20 minutes. So that, at least, these are studies, these are so-called pharmacokinetic studies. So therefore, if it's out of your system that quickly, well, how well does it work? Kind of what I said before, it may trigger genetic pathways that allow it to have a more enduring effect than just, the actual drinking of the water.
Thank you. And another question of high interest is, for those of us who also have pots, could we add salt to the hydrogen water?
I don't know the answer to that. It's if you are on a daily salt addition regime, and I understand that in pots, it's probably better to stay on the regime you have rather than kind of adapting it to a new therapy. I assume you'll still get your full complement of salt, even if you dissolve it in the hydrogen water. I don't know how the salt affects the bubbling of the hydrogen. So my preference would be, if you have a daily salt addition that you need to do, that you do it the way you normally do, and you leave the hydrogen water just for the hydrogen water.
Thank you. And another question is, how are you measuring oxidative stress?
Okay, this is with a salivary marker. Now, oxidative stress is often measured in the blood. In fact, that's how it's usually measured. And in this case, it's called uric acid, which is an antioxidant, but it's inversely related to oxidative stress. So we get 2 saliva samples from you before you start the study and after you finish, to see if there's any kind of change in oxidative stress. Now, the salivary oxidative stress in the uric acid is highly correlated with the uric acid when you measure it in the blood. So it's actually a highly valid mark. Salivary markers aren't necessarily all that valid. This one is. So that's how we measure it. And you can do it at home. And, I'm sure if I could ask any 10 people in the study, would you rather give saliva or would you rather give your blood? And most people say, you know what, I'll go with the saliva. It's much easier to do, and we get a valid indication of oxidative stress. So that's how we measure it.
Yeah, thank you. And I see a couple of questions regarding the age range limit. I think this is probably more a comment instead of a questions. For example, we have one participant said, I'm 73 but interested. Will you be expanding the age bracket? And another participant said, I'm 75-year-old with 30 plus years of living with ME/CFS. Why are persons my age excluded from this trial?
Well, it's okay.
So I think the audience would love to hear from your response.
My first response is, I'm in that too old for the study age range. I'm way into that age range. So I wouldn't even qualify for my own study. I totally get that. The issue is, when people pass 65, the number of comorbidities tends to increase: cardiovascular issues, other issues associated with aging. And that produces, in other words, the results are not as clear when you have many comorbidities that can influence your symptoms. Cardiovascular disease generates its own type of symptoms, including fatigue. So that's the reason we need to do the study on a population that clearly has ME/CFS and not major other comorbidities, especially those associated with age, because with age, you just get a general change in physiological status. And again, this is just so we get the science right, not for any reason that, we want to discriminate against older people, but that's why we do it.
Thank you. And another question, starting with a thank you, Dr. Friedberg, for dedicating your career to helping people who suffer from this debilitating disease. The question come with it is, how do you account for other treatments a patient may be taking during this trial? Are there any contradictions? In other words, how do you control for other variables?
Yeah, what we do is we'll ask about treatments that people are undergoing. Usually it's various medications, and there really are no exclusions unless you're undergoing a major, cancer therapy, with IV, chemo, all that kind of thing, going for regular IVs, apart from something, for CFS, like IVIG, all that. Those those would likely interfere with this, but otherwise we just ask, we record the information, and we can control for other treatments in our statistical analysis. It kind of demanding that you have no other treatment but this, it's unrealistic.
Right, thank you. And the question is related to the control of variables, and you have partly answered. The question goes, how are there any patient comorbidities, including clotting and severe microclotting, spinal issues, and other oxidative stress that you see as risky for trying hydrogen water? Or do you think hydrogen water might especially help patients with these other oxidative stress issues?
Yeah, hydrogen water, again, there's a pretty substantial animal literature, and now there's more of a human literature. It seems to be, it's non-toxic, it's benign from everything I can tell. I would not think that it's going to damage anybody, with serious medical issues. I mean, with a serious medical issue like you're describing, they probably would not be best suited for this kind of study because, I get it, your attention is elsewhere on other very major conditions that you're dealing with. Now, again, I'm not giving medical advice, but this is kind of my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. And just it's interesting question comes in from, is there any way participants can actually acquire the magnesium tablets you mentioned on their own?
Well, that's top secret, actually. You can, let's put it this way. I don't want to announce, what exactly we're using. I'd rather, and I realize, I'm sure the word gets out. I would just, from me, I just not rather make that announcement. I will say this, when the study is done, this information will be presented. We're having a ICFS ME meeting probably in about a year in Fort Lauderdale. So also it'll be published. And if it's successful, the word is out. What we're using, how much we're using, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of under wraps right now, but the word will get out.
Thank you. So it's about duration, because we see some treatment in the landscape where they only have temporary benefit, and the benefit might wane out. So the questions come along this line. In terms of, do you expect the benefit to be long-lasting or only as long as you take the hydrogen water?
Very good question. I don't know the answer. My guess is if it works, you probably have to continue taking it. Maybe perhaps there's a booster level that will maintain the good effects that it's having. You probably don't eliminate, let's say, whatever oxidative stress is being reduced, probably doesn't get reduced if you stop taking the hydrogen water. Now, that's just my guess. Perhaps it has a longer duration effect without active therapy. So actually, that is a question. We're just looking for the real treatment effect. And then we're going to, if we get it, then we have to see long range, what do people need to do to stay better?
And thank you. And so the question came about the product again. I believe the Cam's obvious also mentioned, the question is about, do you provide a product? So I think the answer is, Dr. Friedberg, your team will ship out the the pill for them to be dissolved. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah, we provide all of them, everything you need product-wise. I mean, everything you need, we provide. Am I saying anything out of scope? No. Everything you need, we will provide. You need a computer.
Could you?
All right. There you go. That's something you need. You need a computer. Yeah.
And could you comment on the cohort or group size you're aiming for these studies? And do you have a plan for the future study? If so, what will be the size of your future study? This is in combination of two questions I see from two participants.
Did you say the sites of the study?
The group size, how many volunteers are you taking for these studies? And do you have any study that you're planning for future? And if so, how many will you be planning to take in the future?
Yeah, our target here is 50 enrolled subjects in this trial. If we get a good result, we'll probably we'll probably double the size in a future trial. And, this is not a placebo trial. Everyone gets active treatment. If you're a patient, that's always good news. But if this really works, we're going to have to do another placebo trial.
Thank you. And I think more questions about exclusion. What will be some criteria that you would definitely be considered as excluded from this study?
I would say major illnesses that involve ongoing treatment and care that may produce ME/CFS type symptoms. Generally we don't exclude many people for that kind of reason. Cancer and heart disease come to mind. If, clearly both of those illnesses can be controlled and you could be screened into the study. But if you're under an active phase of treatment for a major chronic condition, that might be an exclusion. I don't want to say definitely because you really need to go through our screen to get a real accurate answer on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I would ask my colleague to also shift the slide to the contact info page for now, if possible. I guess it's probably a different slide deck, but I think many of you have asked about redisplaying the contact info. I think that's something maybe Dr. Friedberg might be able to work with us to follow up afterwards. And while my colleague is helping us with that, I want to ask another question from Diane. So she was wondering about herxing or detox effect. So it seems like she's been taking hydrogen water for the last few weeks, but mentioned that if she take even one glass, 80 milligram tablet, she get significant detox effects. So she's interested in taking part in this study, but she doesn't think that she'll be able to tolerate the dosing. You talk about, did any of your participants experience severe detox?
What do you mean by severe detox?
Yeah, that would be something I think I would need, Diana, if you can type in the chat box or Q&A again, that will be helpful. So while you do that, I'm going to ask my colleagues to send our way. Okay, so you can see it on the screen. That's Dr. Friedberg's contact info. Okay, so what Diane responded, saying that it has to do with bad headache, muscle ache, and some more extreme exhaustion.
And that's happening, it seems, because of the hydrogen water that she's taking?
Yeah, that's from my understanding. But I think this is a very specific case. It may be hard, so maybe I can ask Diane if you don't mind, you can probably reach out to Dr. Friedberg after the webinar because this might take a little bit more um, thoughts into it.
Yeah, that's probably right. I mean, I've pretty much it's GI and headache are the major effects. So I'm sorry, let me just turn this down. So anything above and beyond that, I'm not clear whether it's, hydrogen water related or not. But, if you're getting, moderate to severe side effects and you're really, it's so uncomfortable that with what you're doing personally, you certainly can make the decision to stop drinking the hydrogen water. Although in the main, I don't find that the side effects with the doses we're using produces anywhere near that, type of intense adverse effects. But, everyone's an individual, so some people could be affected on that level.
Thank you, Dr. Friedberg, and thank you, Diane, for the questions. And just a note for the audience, I think we would encourage you to still send in your info through Solve Together. As you imagine, if Dr. Friedberg get hundreds of inquiries, it would potentially slow down his plan to actually advance study itself. So I would encourage, yeah, thank you. My colleague has already switched back to Solve Together. So I will move on to another question about the commercial availability of hydrogen water. So as we know, this is actually almost a commercially available food supplement, but how would you compare the commercially available options versus the one that you provide in your studies? And I think to Katie, we probably won't be able to answer a specific company that we can even talk about or endorse. But I would let Dr. Friedberg to talk about the commercially available one versus what he's providing through his study.
Yeah, what I'm providing through my study is commercially available, but we take all commercial labeling off the bottles, so you don't know where it's coming from, but it is commercially available. It is the FDA calls hydrogen water GRAS, which means generally regarded as safe. So that's the more federal designation for this type of therapy.
Yeah, thank you. And the question is more specific about SIBO, the small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Our participant asked that that itself can form hydrogen. So what is the dose of hydrogen used versus the hydrogen that's formed via the small intestine bacterial overgrowth? Pretty specific.
Yeah, so we're talking about on the order of 300 milliliters of hydrogen gas a day. I don't know how much these questions are, I think these are good questions, but I realize I'm a little bit out of my expertise. I don't know in terms of, molecular hydrogen, how much is produced in the intestines. So I just can't, I wish I could say something informed about it, but I just don't know.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Friedberg. And some questions about, will the participant be allowed to keep on taking the medicines or supplement they're already taking?
Yes. You don't have to stop. Yes, whatever you're taking, you can continue taking. I would say, I mean, there's sort of a little bit of an exception that I'd rather not discuss now, but for the most part, whatever you're taking, you can continue taking.
And there's a question about for those of us who also have MCAS, Oh, sorry, the question just jumped away. Okay, so sorry, let me shift to another question. So would the anticipated increase in antioxidant capability potentially lead to more energy surges and or crashes during the trial?
Well, when if the oxidative stress, these hydroxyl ions, if they are consumed by they are, in other words, the pathological process of oxidative stress, if it is reduced by the hydrogen water, in principle, that should generate on a physiological level more energy. Now the question is, whether hydrogen gas actually has that lock and key connection to oxidative stress in the body related to mitochondria, which is energy metabolism. Because other antioxidant trials, with vitamins and all, very often you don't get the good effects that you might expect. Now, hydrogen gas has unique properties that other antioxidants don't have. First of all, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's the only antioxidant that we know that crosses the blood-brain barrier. That's pretty important because probably key elements of this illness have brain processes, brain pathologies going on. There are other unique elements of hydrogen gas that make it a particularly effective antioxidant. I'm hoping that uniqueness will make this more effective, with MECFS.
Yeah, thank you. Another question is particularly for people with the MCS, the mast cell activation syndrome, I believe, and they might need to begin anything new very slow and from a very low dosage. And so they're concerned about entering a trial. The original question is about like whether they can obtain hydrogen water themselves, but I think it will be most appropriate. Maybe Dr. Friedberg can talk about the dosing range you plan to use in your study and whether that lowest dosing range, how risky it will be for MCAS, people with MCAS, I should say.
Yeah, I'll tell you, mast cell, of course, I've heard of it. I don't know that much about it. And what that might mean for hydrogen therapy. We do start at the most minimal dose, one pill, and we gradually increase to 3 pills a day. And if you're going to have significant side effects, you usually know in the first week. Also, if you have side effects that are concerning, you just stop the therapy. This is a voluntary trial. You're not obliged to do anything that you're not comfortable doing. So, but to speak to mast cell activation, I don't know, what modifications you'd need if you have that illness and are in this study.
Yeah, thank you. So, and some other question, including we're coming to the end, so I'm gonna really go with 2 more questions, and we'll need to move to the closing remark. So the question actually is a pre-submitted question, is about whether there's a potential for hydrogen water to help with the long COVID associated fatigue.
Yeah, there was a big study. I'm not sure if it's finished yet, and I think it was in Bulgaria, hydrogen water and long COVID. I spoke to the sponsor. He didn't have anything to report, and if there was some striking finding, I'm sure he would have told me about it. But given the parallels between long COVID and MECFS, you'd kind of think if it works in one, it'll work in the other. So I know for acute COVID, there are hydrogen water studies where it does help with symptoms. So yeah, a couple of studies like that in acute COVID. But if you have long COVID, say more than 3 months of ongoing COVID type symptoms, I don't have a study that says, it's helpful.
Thank you. And this has to do with also how long the study participant had been experiencing the ME/CFS related symptoms. So do you see any difference regarding the potential efficacy for hydrogen water on patients who have ME/CFS for less than 10 years, more than 10 years? Is the duration of the suffering have any to do with how much they can expect from this potential treatment? This is supplement.
No, that's a good question. Generally, your chances of complete recovery from ME/CFS are better early on, up to about year 5. But that has nothing to do with treatment per se. Now, analyses of recovery from COVID, once you're past the first few years, it's not clear, what facilitates that recovery or what doesn't facilitate it. So I can't say if you've been ill for 20 years, you're going to do any worse or any better than if you've been ill for 10 years. So that's a question that people always do, that kind of analysis if you have enough people. And, I don't think there's a good answer. One reason there's not a good answer is we don't have a really effective treatment to say it works better on people who've been ill for longer or shorter. So we just don't have a basis to make a prediction.
Thank you very much, Dr. Friedberg, and thank you very much for all the participants on today's webinar. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time. I know there are many questions we were not able to answer, but please continue reaching out to us. And we hope you enjoyed the presentation. And one thing I do want to, yes, my colleague has presented on the screen that we are a nonprofit. So if you would like to see more educational webinar or support our research and advocacy efforts, please consider making a gift today. And if you would like to learn more about our Solve Together real-world data platform, you can visit solvetogether.org. So I'm going to ask my colleague to move on to the next slide for Solve Together. And please note that the attendees of today's event will receive an email with a link to the recording of today's session. And we'll also post it on all our social accounts. Many, many thanks to Dr. Friedberg and to everyone who attended today. So it is our goal and mission to serve you and to advance research. And we hope that you will stay in touch with us and join our online community. Thank you very much today. So Dr. Friedberg, it's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, everyone who participated today and who listened today. It is most appreciated. Thank you for allowing me to highlight my study. It's much appreciated.
Thank you all. Wish you a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye now.